Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, April 17th, and we're back. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast, and I just realized I screwed up the date yet again.
Oh, what an idiot.
Well, as you were talking, I was like, that's not right. Because we're recording this on Tuesday, April 15th, tax day, as everybody knows. And when you said the 17th, I was like, wait. This show has gotten off to an incredible start. I've had tech issues for the last half hour. Kyle forgot the date. We had issues with Kyle's drops not working. And it's going to be probably the best podcast of this episode, or this series we've done in quite a long time.
Yeah, look, I'll hold it down here, fellas. Don't you worry. I'm here. I'm prepped. I'm ready to go. This is approaching the most fun time of the Dynasty season. I mean, we are so close to the NFL draft. I feel like the week before the NFL draft to the week after the NFL draft is probably my favorite time for Dynasty.
There's way too much speculation. The people are coming out of the woodworks, and by the people, I mean random Reddit threads of people from what they've heard from their cousin's mama. And I mean, Betz and I are getting a lot of DMs, a lot of people in Discord saying, hey, I heard this from this other person. And so I feel like the speculation, we want to kind of bring that in on this episode. And we're going to be talking about team draft visits because we've kind of got some data. We'll talk about some certain teams that have brought in prospects and start to connect the dots while also keeping an open mind that certain players will not be on the board when that team who really likes that player is picking at, I don't know, the Saints at 9. The Saints are like the team right now that everybody wants to connect the dots. It's like, I don't know who's going to be on the board then. So we're going to do some super sleuthing, guys. Like that's really what we are. We're detectives.
Yeah, this time of year you have to be. And Kyle, genuinely, you do some really great work from time to time.
Stop. Just done?
Yeah, full stop. But what you've been doing the last week, the way you are digging into, like, you're like a ChatGPT deep research project right now on the history of all these franchises and the current, who they're bringing in, who they're talking to in interviews and at the combine and on their, Dallas day and at their top 30 visits. And then you're going back year after year after year looking at history and how, I mean, it's wild. And so I'm excited to hear all the things that I think you said before the show. You're like, man, you can really make this say whatever you want it to say. It's like, oh, they were clearly targeting this player and, it was a smokescreen.
The Saints are one of those teams that, like, I'm looking at the history of data, which we'll get into that. We'll get into some listener questions. But the Saints, like, you could really read their situation in so many ways. But after Derek Carr stuff, you can go, well, obviously they're taking a quarterback at 9. Or obviously they have a couple of quarterbacks on the board that they're thinking, or obviously they're going to trade up to get a, like, you could literally go in 5 different directions. So is the betting market still like them take a quarterback minus 200 bets, something like that?
I don't know what it is specifically, but I do know that as of our recording, they are the favorites to take Shedeur Sanders. And I don't buy that, quite frankly. The Shedeur Sanders thing is wild, man. Like 2 weeks ago, he was like, oh, it's probably gonna be the second pick. Now it's like, does this dude even go in the first round? Who knows? But I think the Saints approach will make sense if they all stack up the quarterbacks on their board this way, which we don't know what they're thinking, but some of the most trusted kind of beat reporters there, Nick Underhill, has kind of insinuated like they like him, but do they like him enough to be a top 10 pick? Not sure. So maybe they just take best player available and then come back in round 2 with one of these other guys. So who knows, man? I love draft season. The rumors, the speculation, it's all up in the air.
Yeah. I think where we land on Shedeur, where we had the quarterback prospect episode, we did some mock drafts and stuff, is that I think we all think he can be a capable NFL quarterback. A difference-making fantasy quarterback is a much different, like, discussion. And I think if he doesn't run, and really in college, like he could escape the pocket, but he also could escape into pressure. I just worry if we're going to get somebody who's like an efficient passer with really low volume and doesn't run at all. And then it's like, oh, you top out at like QB 15 on a season.
You mean
if you have a great season.
Well, you're just talking. I was like, that sounds a lot like Derek Carr. And it would just be hilarious if the Saints did take him. Be like, we got our guy. Oh, it's actually just Derek Carr again.
That is true, because Derek Carr, has basically been QB 13 through 19 his entire career.
Every year that he's healthy.
Yeah, same exact spot. So we are a week and a half away from the NFL draft. The Ballers will get to give their predictions this Friday on the DFS podcast. Betz and I are doing a betting mock draft where we go through each pick and kind of say, here's where the betting markets are, here's what we think. So there's a lot that still has to change. And I don't know, this podcast 2 weeks from now when we record, we'll sound so much smarter. Everything we say here is just stupidity, dumb. It's going to be wrong.
Every year?
Some of what we will say will be right.
Okay.
Every year, some of what we say lands. So, and honestly, you guys have done a pretty good job with your DFS and betting show and some of those markets. It's a lot of fun considering the stupid amounts of sleuthing you're doing right now. I will be listening.
Yes. So we're going to get right into that. I started unpacking this data mostly from Mike getting curious about it. And this is how a lot of stuff happens around footballers. And it's one of my favorite parts about what we do in our job is just we get curious where we don't know the answer. And half the time when we're researching, I feel like we want there to be this big bada boom. This is the point. This will change fantasy football. And a lot of times it's like the NFL's random. But what we did is over the last decade, since 2015, we have the data in front of us of the top 30 visits for every single NFL team. The only thing I want to add in there is that 2020 really messes up the data because we don't have the same in-person stuff. So that does shift some of it. But basically, we can look at all the data of what teams did before the draft, and they go from combine visits to top 30 to private workouts. If you have a private workout with a team, it's at least more information. You can almost count that as like an extra visit if you want to. But I looked at the last decade, and I found that of the 12 first-round running backs taken, which there's not many, right? We don't have a ton of running backs that are that elite in getting the draft capital. Half of them were a direct match with their top 30 team. 50% might not sound like a lot, but the NFL draft has so much that's going on. It's not just a one-to-one of like, did they pick this player? There's teams that are trading up, players that got picked earlier.
Yeah,
There's just so much. So 50%
if you think about it, you know, every single player can only be taken by one team, one of 32. So a 50% hit rate that they did have a visit with that team, obviously they're going to have more than one team they visit, but it's like, yeah, that's a pretty strong indication that there's a good chance that they get taken. And obviously every team that brings them in for a visit, they might want them, but they're not on the board to take them. So so much of it is out of their control, but I feel like that's a pretty good indication, a good marker of like good odds for a player going there.
It's at least information that you can have in front of you and start the conversation. So, you know, you can add it as a piece of the puzzle. It gets a little worse as you go down second round, third round. There's just so much more chaos that happens. But keep in mind, if a player is taken, so teams met with Saquon Barkley, but the Giants said, I got to take this guy. Dave Gettleman, he said, I got to take this guy at 2.
It's me, Dave.
So running backs in the first round is 50% direct match. Wide receivers is 44%, and there's a lot more to deal with. There's 45 first-round wide receivers since 2015, so 44% is actually not bad. But here's the piece of information that I want to bring up is if a team uses multiple visits for the running back position, the hit rate goes up to 53%. They're going to take a running back in the first 3 rounds. It's 71% in the first 4 rounds. If they use 3 or more visits, which we're going to talk about some of those teams today, the hit rate skyrockets to 64% of the time. If a team used 3 or more visits for running back, then they took one on day 1 or day 2. So that's like a really good indicator for some of these teams that I want to talk about. Wide receivers, even bigger because there's way more visits that get used. But we're going to focus mostly on running backs. And I think Jason wants to start us off with the team that, like, I'm going back through this data. This is the most visits ever for a running back position by a team. It's the Steelers.
Yeah, we've tweeted about it. It's insane. You have a second round tender on Jaylen Warren, and you think, oh, okay, they're gonna unleash the guy and let him do what Austin Eckler did. I don't think that's how they view it, considering that they have brought in Tootin, DJ Giddens, Dylan Sampson, Jaden Blue, Caleb Johnson, Ollie Gordon, Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, and RJ Harvey so far for top 30 visits. That is insane. They clearly are saying we need a running back in this draft class. Now, I will say when you factor in those names, obviously Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, those are the higher end guys. Maybe they could pull the trigger in round 1, but they've brought in a lot of guys in a very deep class, which means they might actually be better served to be one of those teams taking which one they believe is the best come the third round or something like that. But I do expect a day 2 draft capital pick to go to the Steelers at the running back position. That is, they're showing their card. That's not a smokescreen. They're not trying to be like a smokescreen. Bringing running backs in this year really isn't a valuable smokescreen because there's a lot of running backs out there. So it's not like you're trying to get other teams to make you believe like, oh no, they're going to take one. Like, it's okay if teams take one this year because there's enough out there for everyone to eat. So they're just showing their hand. They're saying, a lot of times we talk in fantasy, like follow the money, right? Don't listen to what people are saying. What are they doing with their contracts? What are they actually spending money on? And this is basically akin to that. This is them with their actions saying we're drafting a running back. It's a priority for us. We're spending our time, our energy, our effort, our money on, bringing these people in to have in-person visits because we want to get it. We want to get it right. And so, yeah, but you can pretty much like if, on our predictions episode coming up for where rookies are landing, if we don't have a rookie going to the Steelers, we're doing it wrong.
Yeah, this is a ton of top 30 visits. 2 questions. 1, Kyle, what do you think they're serving at these catered lunches?
Very important question.
They're definitely serving Chili's.
Obviously.
The Steelers are, they're going not too nice.
Okay.
They're just. What's the second question?
Oh yeah, second question. Based off of this list, do you guys think they're more likely to take one in round 3+ because they don't have a second round pick? Remember they got DK Metcalf with that pick trade? So we have kind of the average position of mock drafts across the industry. Like Travion is kind of steamed up to now maybe he goes in round 1, but I think a lot of us would say like most likely he's kind of an early day 2 guy, but he could sneak in round 1. Also, Caleb Johnson is kind of one of those like fringe round 2, round 3 guys. Would you guys say based off these visits with Tootin, Giddens, Sampson, Jaden Blue, those types, Ollie Gordon, would you guys say they're more likely to take one at pick, 21 or 83, which is kind of their 2 early picks?
It's tough because there's no guarantee that somebody like Hampton is going to be available at 21. I think the Broncos has been the most mocked pick in the history of mock picks of him being taken at 20. But Henderson, I think, has gained steam as being a late round first. So if I had to plug them with a first round, it's either Hampton or Henderson. And then I think there's a menu of players that they can take at 83. There's also some wide receiver visits that they had. Matthew Golden, the Iowa State wide receivers that could be in that range too for pick 83. They're a team that needs multiple players. And so not having a second round pick, I feel like based on their actions says they're starting to pigeonhole themselves like, here's what we're going to do. So I think my takeaway from the study has been that they have to use this tier system, and we can use mock draft database data to tell us, like, I think Hampton and Henderson would be the guys that are available there in the first round at pick 21. And then there's a bunch of dudes that are there at pick 83. So Jason, do you think they take Hampton or Henderson?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying it right? Like Hampton, Henderson in the first. If those guys are there, they'll consider them. There's kind of the second tier of players that they didn't really bring in. The Judkins and some of those guys that like might be going a little bit higher in mock draft database. They're bringing guys in that would go in their third round. So I do think it's first or third. Obviously, tier-based drafting will be wise. when they're on the clock in the third, if there's still like 5 running backs that they really like that they brought in because everyone's playing the waiting game, that then they'll probably try to fill another hole. But it really is, I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a running back run. Everyone's going to be waiting for a while. And it's like, I just hope that this run happens in the third, not in the fourth, because that's just more investment from the actual NFL teams pulling the trigger there in committing to a player for fantasy purposes. But once they start coming off the board, that second tier, I think you'll have a lot of teams going, okay, let's get our guy now.
Yeah, one of our writers was trying to compare this. We had a writer's call, and he was like, this is going to be like when you're in your quarterback or one quarterback draft, and everybody all of a sudden it's like, I'm waiting to take a quarterback.
Yep.
You're kind of like putting your fingers out, like, who's going to do it? And then somebody does, and there's this run of NFL teams. So the Steelers are super interesting because of the lack of draft capital. The Giants is who you have Betz, and they brought in some running backs. I mean, they're the story right now of they brought in all these quarterbacks too to figure out what they want to do at 3. But what do you see for the Giants at running back?
Yeah, they hit on Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round last year, which was a really nice value pick for the Giants for what he gave them. And I think what they're looking for based off of these top 30 visits is an early down complement to Tyrone Tracy based off of these body types. The names that we have on our list: Caleb Johnson, Ollie Gordon, Quinshad Judkins, and it's not on our list officially, but Cam Scottaboo is going to meet with them this week. So they want an early down grinder or someone that can carry the ball on early downs, which not that Tyrone Tracy can't, but like when you think about his skill set, he's kind of more in that finesse pass catching type of back. So it definitely tells me that they're adding somebody probably in the pick 100-ish range. They've got picks 34, 65, 99, and 105, but obviously this team has major needs elsewhere at pick 3 and 34. So I'd be surprised if they went in based off these visits on one of these top 3 or 4 backs in the class. But I think they're very, very likely to take one, like I said, maybe in that round 3-ish range. And based off the archetype, it will be one of these more early down type running backs to complement Tyrone Tracy.
And like I mentioned with the data earlier, if a team uses 3 or more visits for the running back position, 64% of the time they took a running back in the first 3 rounds, 80% in the first 4 rounds. Now, we like the day 1, day 2 guys. That's kind of the bucket that we stay with. But I did give some exception of saying, like, if you take somebody at the very beginning of the 4th round, it's at least some signal that you planned on taking a running back and maybe your guy you wanted didn't get to you. But a lot of those round 4, round 5 running backs don't work out, but Tracy did last year.
Yeah, that's where it really is an important distinction. That's why I'm hoping that the running back run happens in the 3rd and that teams just start grabbing their guys, because from an NFL standpoint, contracts, longevity, roster building, all of that, the way that these teams view who they get on day 2, meaning the 2nd and 3rd round, to me, there's just such a massive break between a 3rd rounder and a 4th rounder because of the day of the draft. It's like, the 4th rounder's like, let's fill in some gaps now. The first 2 days are let's find our important pieces.
Right. So the Broncos is the team that I want to bring up. They've had 4 official visits as of right now, and it was Judkins, Caleb Johnson, DJ Giddens, and Jaden Blue, the pass-catching back out of Texas. I think they've been connected a lot with Hampton. That doesn't mean because they didn't visit with him, they won't take him. In fact, we brought up the hit rate earlier. It's like, okay, I think it's on the board. But I just want to point out the tier-based system. Like, them picking at 51, that's a great spot for Judkins, Caleb Johnson, based on their mock draft database numbers. And I think we'd all be happy. Like, if Judkins or Caleb Johnson was taken there, pick 51 in the 2nd round, would you guys think of that landing spot and say, I think these guys are knocking on the door of being the 105 in rookie drafts, in one quarterback leagues?
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's we talked about a couple weeks ago on the main show, we had a question of where do you hope what's your perfect landing spot for a player? And to me, it was Caleb Johnson going to the Broncos solely because it would vault another, wherever Henderson, Omarion Hampton, and Genty go, they're going to be, if they fall, if they go to good destinations, bad destinations, they're going to be hot commodities. I want more and more hot commodities. So the Broncos are such a good landing spot. If they're taking, any type of high draft capital, day 2 or earlier pick, they're in the conversation with, 104.
Yeah. And I think
Judkins, I keep talking him up, but I think he's going to go somewhere we're going to be excited.
Yeah, and I think they are obviously very live to take Hampton, and I don't think anybody would be surprised by that. But their GM came out, I don't know, like a month ago, and they asked him about the running back, and he said, we're taking a running back in this class. But then he kind of talked up like this class is so good for the depth of it. So even though right now all we see in mock drafts is Hampton to Denver, he's seen every single one. I actually wouldn't be surprised at all if they go with one of these other guys that are on our list here later in the draft. And what's notable about Sean Payton is, I forget the stat of like how many years he's done it, but he trades up a lot on day 2 to like go get his guy. So it's another thing to keep in mind that he could, package a couple of picks and go up and get his favorite of the bunch.
I definitely think they want someone who could catch the ball and do well with the work afterwards. The GM was talking about how this isn't a good draft class for 3-down backs, the full workhorse. That's where I think Omarion Hampton is penciled in a lot of people's mock drafts because he's, Genty is, Hampton is, and then it's like, okay, now you're going and you're going to try to, find that joker that the Broncos are looking for, and that's like a Henderson.
That would be an awesome
We are
fit.
at the point where, we're at the point where I can look at a mock draft and I can tell by the first couple of picks, I go, I think I know what the next 10 picks are going to be because everyone's kind of filing in. If you're going to put this player somewhere, it's where you're going to go. So Hampton, 20 of the Broncos would be really cool. Based on historical data, I would say that's probably not as likely, but who knows? I will have all this data for us on the website. And it was a fun little deep dive from us as a team kind of saying like what could be valuable, what's another piece, and we'll have that for you. Let's take a quick break and then we'll hop in the mailbag. All right, boys, I'm going to save you a little bit of showtime right here by just hitting this button.
Mailbag.
Thank goodness.
It's one of the few. I know it's one of the few mailbag drops where somebody doesn't have to do it. So, let's just move in because these are people. They're on Discord, and I also got some off of Twitter that have questions leading up to the draft. And I know that some of our opinions are going to change, but you guys are informed people. This first question is from Jason's Black Polo from our Discord. I know, Jay, you're a new man though.
Yeah, I'm going to tan polo today.
Who are
Still
you?
a polo, don't worry.
Just when you think you know a guy.
I can't remember you ever wearing a tan polo.
This is the first time. It's a
looks
little
good.
too close to skin tone, to be honest.
Yeah, you just look like you're shirtless just on a podcast. His question is, would any draft capital and landing spot combination put a wide receiver above Ted McMillan in this year's rookie draft? So we've talked about Matthew Golden gaining steam to potentially be the first wide receiver. Some people are mocking him to the Cowboys at 12 ahead of McMillan. So, Jason, would that change you for rookie drafts?
I mean, I think it depends more on where Tech goes and how far he falls. My answer to the question is there's definitely a place like Tetairoa McMillan. He's my number one right now. There's absolutely ways that the NFL draft could change that. I don't see him as such a tier above everyone else that no matter where he lands, I wouldn't flip, other options, whether Travis Hunter is told, hey, he's flat out a wide receiver, we're going to play him there and then, cycle him in at cornerback. Emeka Egbuka, I think that if he surprises and gets a lot of good draft capital with a good opportunity and Tet falls, maybe I take T-Mac later. There are ways it could happen. I mean, as of right now, T-Mac is the one. You look at most mock drafts, I still expect him to be the first wide receiver taken. And so if that goes, if he's the first wide receiver off the board, then he'll be the first wide receiver in rookie drafts.
Agreed. I think when you have a lot of wide receivers that go in the similar bucket of the draft, like a couple years ago, we had the Zay Flowers year where all four of those guys kind of went right in a run. You don't really use draft capital at all in that point because they're all the same draft capital. But in this specific scenario, it's trending that Egbuka's kind of, I think, a coin flip at this point to go in the first round. Burden seems to be sliding a little bit. And then obviously the other guys after that, I would be shocked if they go in the first round. So you're really only talking about, Travis Hunter, which is his own thing. T-Mac and Golden, and I've shared on the show multiple times, I have so much concern about Golden that I'd be surprised if I flip the two and have anybody above T-Mac, if you're not talking about Travis Hunter, just because those two are just so locked into round one and the other guys are so unlikely. And Golden's landing spot could be awesome with the Cowboys, but we've been fooled by landing spot in the past a bunch, right? So I don't want to get caught up in that too much.
Do you feel like the last month with McMillan has just been this massive smear campaign of just
yes.
like
all the NFL teams trying to that dude sucks. He's not watching film, just trying to get him to fall to him.
Yeah, no, it's just funny because this is a player at the end of the year. They're all like, this is the safest pick you could take. Look at the production. He's going to be a top 10 pick to I don't know. He's fallen down in the first round. And then you spill that over into rookie drafts. I think people are honestly, what they're looking for is this doesn't feel like a fun pick anymore. I don't want to make a safe pick. I want to make a home run pick. And I would be very happy with McMillan. Depending on the spot, I have the 103 in a draft. And there could be some running backs that I really want to take there. But I also know I could take McMillan. And I think I would feel happy. I want the feeling of taking Malik Neighbors there. And you're not going to get that feeling this year.
Right.
This is not going to happen. Next one is from Milk Was a Bad Choice on Discord. If you're rebuilding and you have top 5 picks, so in rookie draft, are you trying to move out of this class with it being so running back heavy? I've always been under the impression that running back should be the last thing you add coming out of a rebuild. So what they're trying to frame here, I totally understand, is we care about young wide receivers. That's how you should build. My team's rebuilding. By the time that I'm good, these running backs are not going to be as good anymore. So how should I do this? I don't think it changes that much. I want players that have value if I know I'm not going to compete right away. So do you guys feel the same way?
I do.
So I think that the most important thing is that you take good players. And so running backs are good players. I don't think you need to trade out of this class for future. You start building winning franchises, and it starts by getting guys that score fantasy points. So while I do agree in principle that I would rather have in a rebuild, I'd rather focus on having a wide receiver than a running back. If you're going to trade, don't trade for next year and punt and just keep doing that. If someone really needs a running back, and trade for their wide receiver, get a young stud veteran wide receiver who's not too old. And I think you're fine there. But if I am rebuilding, I'm trying to look for a wide receiver over a running back, but I'm not going to make my decision based solely on that. It's that black and white.
I think this year's class is a perfect example of that, where it's in previous seasons, if you had an early first and we had these, Marvin Harrison and Blake Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. types coming out, and you're like, I'm excited about these prospects, then yeah, I wouldn't take the first running back in that class. Now, last year's running back class was not good, and we kind of knew that, so that's not a perfect example. But this year, I'm not going to take McMillan or Igbukah over, I don't know, Henderson, just because I think that's the right way to build a startup or a redraft, a rebuild. I want the best player like Kyle, so that's going to score fantasy points, that's going to hit this year, and then therefore have value moving forward. Whether or not I use that player again next year as part of my rebuild or trade asset. You just want these guys to hit as rookies. Mm-hmm. The worst thing is taking a first round guy and then 12 months later that guy has no value, which it's easy to say in hindsight, but you're just trying to play probability here. And we think these running backs that are going to go really high in the draft are super, super strong prospects.
It's real. There are lessons that you have to keep learning in life over and over. And I know better. And it's whatever it is, it's I'm never going to drink again. I feel so bad. Or I'm running up for a shot in pickleball and I know I just need to tap it. Don't drive when I run up. And I do it over and over and over. One of the fantasy football lessons that has been done over and over and over is I like this other player is better, but I want this position. Don't do that. Take the better player. It will always, always work out for your success in fantasy to grab the better player than the position you think you need in your rookie drafts.
Well said. Well said. The other life tip that I was thinking about was just, it always goes better with a bidet. It always does.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
just
every
true.
time that I think I shouldn't, I'm like, oh, I don't need to put one in this bathroom.
You
I've
should.
learned from my friend that it's just always better. I've always had a better experience. So thank you, Jason. I also just think, so I was curious with you two. I kind of know where your teams stand. I know, Jason, like I can't remember a time in the main Ballers Dynasty that you were rebuilding. You've always kind of...
I've never rebuilt. I've always been great, except...
You have, and you've also been gifted with a 101 in a trade that you that worked out years in advance. So I feel like you've restocked.
I worked my booty off for that one. I had to trade 2 extra firsts to take Travis Etienne off of that team to ensure that became the 101.
Okay,
but anyway,
checkers, baby.
I'm asking because in that draft I had the 102, and Al and I were rebuilding, and I was thinking to myself like, okay, we didn't have the choice between Bijan and JSN, but we took JSN also for the psychological reasons, at 102, because you have a little leeway when you take a wide receiver. It feels like they're young. They're going to work it out. It's a first-round player. Like, it feels like there's less pressure than taking a running back where the shelf life is a lot smaller. Now, Bijan's in a different category. We would have loved to have Bijan. But I think you're just going to be happy with getting players that a year from now gain value. And I think the top 3 running backs between Genty, Hampton, and Henderson feel like they're going to be solid a year from now. Like, you're not going to be complaining. I have people all the time like, I need this position, but I have the 101. It's like, you're going to be happy with Genty a year from now. He's going to have enough value. Next question from HK Pants on Discord. What's the tight end draft strategy for dynasty startups with tight end premium? So depending on your league formats, usually 1.5 points per reception for tight ends. We usually say that the elites are going to be that much more elite, like McBride and Bowers are going to be that much better, but then the rising tide of the format kind of lifts all boats of everyone saying, ooh, I really want to take this player earlier than what I normally would. But I was looking at some data of people in Superflex and tight end premium. Usually those go together in a draft. It still feels like there's this huge gap between Bowers and McBride. Like, I wouldn't be taking Laporta that much earlier or the rookie tight ends that much earlier in a tight end premium. Do you guys feel that way?
Yeah.
I know my strategy, and I think
Jonnu Smith, that's the strategy.
Sure, that's a great strategy. My strategy, and I love playing tight end premium because I punt tight end. Now, if you can get, if you decide I want to go in on, Bowers or McBride, that is totally acceptable. I would consider that depending on where I'm at in the draft, who's on the board, and make that decision. Now, let's assume you're at a spot, they're gone. Dude, I am taking advantage of how every tight end premium league I've ever been in overreacts to tight end premium. It is not that big a deal. It's kind of like when you're playing in a 6-point per passing touchdown league for quarterbacks, and sometimes people are like, oh, but they score 6. It's like, they all score 6. You're going to be fine. And what happens is when all these other people are taking these, the Sam Laportas and the Hawkinsons and Dalton Kincaids, and they're pushing up all these other players that really aren't going to be winning them championships. They're not going to be guys that are like, I won the championship this year because of Evan Ingram. It's tight end premium, and so I just won. No, I mean, he can be on a championship roster, but he's not the reason you won a championship, even in tight end premium. And so, to me, I love watching those tight ends fly off the board and waiting, because what happens towards the end of your drafts is that all these other teams in your league, they have grabbed 1 or 2 tight ends, and they have holes now at running back and wide receiver. So you can wait and wait and wait, and then all of a sudden there is actual real value at tight ends in tight end premium leagues because Jonnu Smith falls, and so now he's a late pick, or the Pat Freiermuth and Cole Kmet, and you put together a package of kind of later round tight ends, and then you've got awesome running backs and wide receivers who do win championships for you. That's my personal preference, but I know that I'll have some people big mad with me on that.
No, I think that's the right way to do it, actually. And I wrote an article years ago in 2020 the cover boy of that was Zach
Who
Zach
could forget?
Ertz in an Eagles uniform, asking the question like, how should we value tight ends and tight end premium? And it's basically what Jason was saying. The format does elevate the elites and Bowers, McBride, like those types of guys, but in general, ADP...
Not those types of guys. Not those types of guys. Those guys.
Those two guys.
Bowers and McBride, and then that's it. Don't be... Because people are like, oh, the elites, and then they want to get another elite. There's not another elite.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The study kind of found that basically like drafters bucket like the second and third tier like with the first tier, kind of like bumping them up around an ADP, and the return on that is obviously very, very low. So I'm with Jason. If I get one of those two guys, awesome. I'm super excited. They are incredible in these formats, but if you don't get those guys, don't push up the fringe guys just because it's tight end premium. It doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, I was in a startup draft a couple years ago. I'm going to toot my horn for a second, so just get ready, guys.
All right.
And I punted tight end in a tight end premium, and I took some guy named Trey McBride because nobody wanted him, and it was gross at the time because we didn't know what he'd become. But it's one of those things where you're going to take a shotgun approach, and hopefully you find somebody eventually that you can piece together a tight end 6 season. You're not going to get tight end 1 or tight end 2 most of the time. It's not going to happen in your league. And yet the rest of your league is also struggling. Like they're also trying to piece together a meaningful tight end season, and most of your league is starting, I don't know, Cole Kmet or something. Like
yeah,
that's the reality.
Yeah,
it's fine. I hate that we're probably going to all be unanimous on this next question, but it's from Blue Ridge. And we do
I'm
get it a lot.
changing my answer no matter what. Whatever you say, I'm going to say.
Yeah, I want to hear you argue pro this, Jason. Have trade calculators ruined the game that I love? Yeah, tell us why you love trade calculators, Jason.
Trade calculators suck, man. They're just stupid.
You couldn't. I knew you couldn't.
I can't do it. The trade calculators are so dumb. I mean, they're inaccurate, and they make people feel like an opinion is a fact, and it's not true. I don't know. I have they ruined the game? Only if the rest of your league believes in them.
That's what I took out of this question.
Yeah, so find a new league that doesn't have a bunch of dummies. I don't know.
There is literally nothing worse than having trade conversations with somebody in your league, and you kind of both come to an agreement, and you're like, yeah, like that, we're close enough, like sure. And the other guy's like, hold on, let me just check the calculator quick. And then they send you a screenshot of being like, you're off a little bit, man. Like, can you add another second? It's like, dude, just take the trade. And I have guys that do that in my leagues all the time. So yes, I think they have ruined the game that we all love. They're terrible.
I think the game we love is still fantastic and has not been ruined.
Because it's not on our site.
Your thoughts?
It's not. I was trying.
Maybe we'll have a trade calculator someday, but I will tell people, just like we have a top 200 rankings in the Dynasty, people want it. Or not in Dynasty, in just redraft rankings. We have a top 200. It's stupid. Don't draft that way. I think I have a video on the UDK page on the top 200 saying, here's how you use it. Here's how I would use it. I would print it out, I would crumple it up, and I'd throw it in the garbage. And then I'd go over and use tier-based positional drafting.
What a video.
Yeah,
please buy our products.
People want it, and so maybe we will make – we've got great stuff in there. Just don't – It's easy. It's easy. That's all that it is, right? A top 200 list makes you feel like it's so much easier. You don't have to look between this position and that position. You just go, who's the highest on the list? Easy, done. That's what a trade calculator is. It's like, what does it say? It says it's good for me, so it's good for me. It's the amount of times that we try to make a trade and we think we win and we lost.
Right.
Or we mock someone else for being such a dummy. That guy did this dumb thing. And then it was like, oh, that was a brilliant trade. Trade calculators, they're too rigid, but they're easy.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we all want reassurance. And being able to quantify a trade at least helps us go back on like, okay, well, I was thinking this. This also confirms this. And so therefore I'm able to move forward. That's why a lot of times it's a friend that you throw a trade deal and they're like, hey, does this sound right? And a lot of times I'll try to give my 5-second answer. I'm not trying to go too deep. It's just like, yeah, this is pretty close. And that's all I really care about in Dynasty. But the valuation of players, let's say, I'm just going to throw this out. Jonathan Taylor's worth 1,000. That's just what it is in the system. He's worth 1,000 points. That's so arbitrary. And also year over year, it's not a sticky whatever value or calculator you use. Like if we took all of those numbers And then we just said, how does this correlate over the next 3 to 5 years? It would be really bad. Like, you'd be shocked at how bad we are at valuating certain players. It's really tough to get 50%. Jason, you've been in this industry a while. If you are 50+% on predictions, that's a really big deal in this industry. And I don't think people realize that. So don't do it.
And I'm
55!
Yeah.
So it's great.
So you're killing it. All right, let's take a break and we'll come back with some more. Next one from Rob Massey on Twitter. He says, what is the value of Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2025 rookie picks? And he first asked the 102. So the best way to do this, and we always say, is you have to put names with those picks. So we'll first start with Jason. Would you rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. or Marion Hampton?
Marvin Harrison Jr.
Betz?
I thought I was going to be contrarian and saying the same thing, but I'm still taking the Marv side of that one.
I am too, but also I'm a Marv manager in the main league.
The real question, the real follow-up question is Marvin Harrison Jr. or Ashton Genty?
I think I would take
Ashton Genty.
I would take Genty.
So I would probably take Genty as well. If Marv was, year 2 in this draft class, I'd take Genty at the 1. I'd take Marv at the 2. However, I don't think that is an outlandish proposition, and I do think that universally everyone would take Genty above Marvin Harrison Jr., which means if you're out there and you're in a rebuild, the question earlier of like I would prefer a wide receiver to a running back, but I can get Ashton Genty, maybe you look at getting Harrison plus. Add more, add that wide receiver. That's a way you could go. But yeah, I think right now his value would be the 102. The second and third running backs in this draft class, because I would rather have a wide receiver over a running back in the same tier, and I would view them in the same tier. That's fine. And I would have Marvin Harrison still a tier above Tedero McMillan.
Okay. Let me put that Genty 101 talk to the test. So which wide receiver would you say I'd rather have them?
Fun.
Okay. So would you rather have Drake London or Ashton Genty?
Wow. I would rather have Drake London.
I would go Genty.
I'm gonna build. I've done it both ways, man. I've had the teams built with wide receivers and the teams built with running backs, and I know which one is better. I'll take Drake.
Okay. I tend to lean that direction, but there's a lot of wide receivers. Once you start getting in the top 10, it's like, yes, in a startup, would I take Genty at the, in a one quarterback, like the 110, or am I taking Amon-Ra?
It's funny. I just pulled up my Dynasty startup rankings to look at the wide receivers and see where they were, and you picked my breaking point.
Really?
You picked exactly. So I've got Drake London as my wide receiver 9, and I would take Drake London and everyone above him. If I had the 101, I would trade it for Drake London, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., Amon-Ra, Malik, etc. But right after him is where I go, and that's A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's my wide receiver 10, but you're talking now about a guy who's going to be playing at 28 years old. At that point, you lose kind of that wide receiver value that I see in a 23-year-old Drake London. So you nailed the spot where I would put Genty.
I think with running backs, I just don't want to be left holding the bag. And yet this is a player that is going to be taken super early, is going to have a really good, first 4 to 5 years of his career. And yet if you're rebuilding or you have this pick, because a lot of these people have the 101 or 102 because their teams stink. And they're like, I don't want to take a running back here because it's not as fun. And it's the question we had earlier. But I think you have an asset that is going to be good for a long time. And then a year from now, let's just say like you have Genty, your team still stinks. I think he's still going to be super valuable, like a top 5 running back, regardless of what goes on. Then if you want to flip him, and you get some other assets, you can do that, but you're not going to lose value with Genty, right?
You're not. No, you're not going to lose value with Genty. The only way you're going to lose value with Genty is if he comes in and completely stinks or has a catastrophic injury, and I don't think we expect either of those to happen.
Okay. Let's go with, this is a question. Jason, you're going to have to do the heavy lifting for this one, but it was a fun one. It's from Colt Williams. He said, you guys have a pretty sick studio, but what's one thing that's kind of sketchy behind the scenes that the people don't get to see and you just kind of live with it?
Oh, Papa Josh. No.
That was I think people don't realize, I mean, they got a picture into it when, you were caught going to the bathroom mid-show, but there is a bathroom in the studio.
Yes. In fact, not only is there a bathroom in the studio, while we have been recording this show that you're listening to, there have been people showering in that bathroom, not in the studio. Maybe when you hear that, you're thinking
and by people, like one at a time.
One at a time, yes.
Okay.
But you also might be thinking like our whole studio complex. No. In just the room where we record, there's a bathroom in that section of the room. It's got its own door, but it's inside the walls is a bathroom, and that's the only shower we have. So if we're coming from pickleball and we're getting ready for the day, we gotta shower while we're here. And so that would be the behind the scenes hazard.
Yeah, sometimes you got to see owl in a towel, and that's just.
I'm happy to report I've never seen owl in a towel. I would say one other behind the scenes thing. Let's give more bad things behind the scenes here. I have to walk around, like our cameras that are here are very close. So like there's a tripod where every day I'm like walking behind Andy's chair and in front of the tripod. Every now and then I kick it. It's like, we got to fix the camera because it's really close. We also have, so we put these sick, well, you can't see it on this video, but we've got a bunch of signed jerseys. And we hang one on the wall for each show, and we swap them out, if we're doing a quarterback show, put Jalen Hurts up or, whatever. And right on the floor, just out of the sight of the camera's view, is just a pile of these frames of jerseys, just ugly, laying, propped up against the wall for ease.
I kind of miss the old school jerseys. Like there was a Sammy Watkins jersey we used to have. And we need to put up the fun, stupid ones.
I don't know if we still have those. Eventually, I think we just throw those out at live events.
Yeah, the Keenan Allen one you guys wanted to throw away, and I said, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I will add one more that is, I don't know if it shows up sometimes, but it drives pretty much everyone crazy that there are people right outside of the studio.
Oh my gosh.
That they're tough guys. Okay? Let's put it that way.
Oh, they're so cool. They're so cool, man. They got their big, loud engines, and they love revving the cars. So there's actually so we're in like an industrial complex. I think that's what you call this, where, it's kind of like warehouse space, like half office, half warehouse. And we turn the warehouse into a recording studio. And so we are in the warehouse spot. So here, this should have been, I'm bearing the lead. We're in a room that has a gargantuan roll-up garage door. Like, just a giant industrial garage door is one of the walls that we're in, and we have a fake wall in front of that. You can't really use it or access it. But so there's all these, one of the companies right next to us, they deal with like super fancy elite foreign sports cars. I don't know what they do, but they love revving them engines. And that's bad for an audio show.
Yeah, if we do a good job of taking that out. I would like, the show's not really edited, like we're not cutting scenes or anything, but that stuff is very annoying.
We run it through good filters. Mike and Jeremy do an amazing bang-up job of trying to make sure that the end result audio is good. So you guys might never have heard it, but we hear it.
Yeah. Next question from Push the Pigskin. Who are some of your current favorite Nasty Boy trade targets? Betz, I'm going to let you handle this one because you've got a couple of names.
Oh, man. Okay. So the first group here I have is not necessarily true Nasty Boys, but these are cheap, boring veteran wide receivers who will give you wide receiver 2/flex value several weeks throughout the year. Jacoby Myers, Calvin Ridley,
Love it.
Darnell Mooney.
Don't.
Juwan Jennings, who I'm very excited about Jennings.
That's a great
good
name.
list.
You can give, I think, a mid, even to late second, especially if you wait till your rookie draft and just snag one of these guys for super cheap. So if you need wide receiver help, I think that's viable. Cheap RB2s who are literally just scratch off, who knows. Marshawn Lloyd was supposed to be a thing last year. You could probably get him for like a fourth. Sean Tucker.
Zero top 30 running back visits for the Packers.
Very interesting. Sean Tucker, flashed for like 2 weeks last year, but Dick White is kind of slowly being phased out, and he's in a contract year if I remember correctly. So I think Sean Tucker could have a role behind Bucky, and then Will Shipley. I know that the Eagles signed Quadzilla, AJ Dillon, but there's I think better than 50-50 chance that Will Shipley wins the RB2 job going into year 2. Heaven forbid Saquon gets hurt. Will Shipley is free right now, and he would be an every week start if Saquon went down. So those are some of my top names.
All right, I'm going to give you some other nasties because I was
these are
going
nasty.
through rosters. I'm like, who is super cheap? And I'm talking like dirt cheap. Some of these might be on the waiver wire. Jalen Coker of the Panthers.
Sure.
Okay. He's way out there. Brenton Strange, right now, it looks like he could have the job, and he had a couple of moments last year. Olamide Zaccheaus might be on your waiver wire, but he might be the starting slot wide receiver for the Bears. Eric All Jr., I need to get the injury update, but like he's going to be out for a while, and yet I'm kind of still interested as like a scratcher.
Really?
Yeah, so he missed most of last year. He tore his ACL, I think like 5 or 6 off the top of my head, but at some point early in the season. But there was like rumblings about Eric All Jr. at the time for Cincinnati being like, they like this guy, like there's a chance he could develop into a role. And I actually think I remember like calling him when we did a Trade Targets episode, Kyle, in season. I think I mentioned him like the week later he hurt his knee, but he has complications going back to a previous ACL injury during college days. So now there's reports as of like, a month ago of like the team isn't really counting on him to even play this year, basically, because of the second injury.
I love it. So cheap.
So literally he's probably on your, you have to actually trade something, to take him off somebody's team. He's probably on your waiver wire. You could stash worse players, certainly, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play at all this year.
What about Jatavian Sanders? Anyone still in on Jatavian Sanders? I am a little. I'm a little.
He's worth a
I was
stash.
not
flashes.
Yeah, he's worth a stash.
They re-signed our boy Tommy High-T Trimble for a multi-year deal. So
Theo Johnson?
I think he's a really
Theo
good stash.
Johnson.
Yeah.
These are all players that like.
I mean, we're
nasty, Kyle.
talking nasty boys.
Okay, what about Hendon Hooker?
No, I saw that name, and I saw that you wrote down the doc, and I was like, "Are you kidding me right now, Kyle? Hendon Hooker? Come on!"
Didn't we had a writer's call last
night. Feed this
night.
to Mike.
Yes, Kyle. Tell the people we had a writer's call last night. And what was the information that was shared?
We did have some information. It was leaked about the Saints potentially being, connected to Hendon Hooker, and also I just want you to know that at lunch today, Mike is going to bring up Hendon Hooker.
Okay, I'm prepped for it.
Jason, at lunch before Mike says it, you should go, like just randomly be like, what I was thinking about? I was like a really good trade target. I'm kind of into Hendon Hooker this year.
Oh man,
and see Mike's face
That's funny.
his head would explode.
Mike really liked him a couple years ago. Khalil Herbert's the other name. Right now, he's the backup to Jonathan Taylor? ? So a lot of these are just super dirty. So it is whatever. A couple more questions here before we head out. And I got multiple questions about Chris Olave. And I feel like
I have multiple questions about Chris Olave.
Okay. Are you guys going through the mourning process of Chris Olave the same way I am, which is literally just, I know I have him on my roster and I want to put my head in the sand, just hope it all gets better.
Yes. I mean, our main Dynasty league, Chris Olave has been an important part of my demise. Because
we told you to trade for him on the show last year and you did it and you went behind our back.
Yeah, well, I got him. And I think he's so talented and so good. And I would love for him to play football. And I would love for him to be healthy and play football. I'd love for the human being to be capable of staying healthy and playing football. The concussion issues he's had is so devastating where it's like, when I look at my roster, genuinely, I don't include Chris Olave in my own evaluation of my roster. I don't look there and go, okay, I've got Bijan, I got Drake London, I got Chris Olave. I skip Chris Olave. Like, I view him as a deleted player, and I just hope that he finds a way to just keep playing. I'm just waiting for one big hit.
He is 24.8 years old. Jason,
he's
you
so good, so young.
You are the highest in startup rankings, which I get it. I'm there. Betz, how do you view him? He's kind of in this nebulous, like, he's young, and so we still have to put him in like wide receiver 2 territory. But if you've lived the experience, you haven't felt that at all. You've just been disappointed and sad that there's more.
Well, and now this Derek Carr shoulder issue is obviously not helping things. I was in a position to trade for Chris Olave just a few weeks ago. The offer was my Amon-Ra and 107 for the 103 and Olave. And I was like, I'm interested, but like, I love Amon-Ra, as everybody knows. And I think there's a really strong player that's going to be available at that 103. But then I sat there and I was like, man, I, just like Jason, am really concerned about this concussion stuff. Like, the history is not good. He's had several in the NFL documented going back to college. I'm sure there's more in there. So it's like, man, once these guys have these, if they have another one, the risk of missed time is even better. And I think if that exact trade would have been offered to me 12 months ago, I probably would have taken it. Obviously, different class, but like, I think his value has fallen off so much in everybody's eyes that if you have him, I think you just have to hold and kind of hope that he rekindles some of that value and has a good year. Then you can reevaluate. But just the market is so low.
I'm glad you said that. When I say I've deleted him off mentally of my own, roster evaluation, that does not mean Kyle brought it up. Like, I actually have him the highest in Dynasty rankings. I think he is super talented, super young, and can have bright days ahead. You cannot trade Chris Olave right now. Like, I think people hear what I'm saying and they might go, I need to go get anything from Chris Olave because his career could be deleted. It's true. And there's a world where maybe you do that and it sadly works out because, he takes another blow and retires from football. Who knows? But I don't think that's the right approach. I don't think his value is anywhere near what it deserves to be. And a lot of players have concussions and find ways to play. Obviously, he is one player who has come back after concussions many times. So I would right now it's hold and pray. Like, I'm not trading him away. I'm just hoping, because if he comes back and plays 17 games, he's going to be a top 15 like dynasty startup asset.
Yes. I was trying to put it in context for people that have the rookie picks and they're comparing it to this year's class. Like, okay, where would I rather have, Egbuka, and say, would you rather have Egbuka or would you rather have Chris Olave?
Olave. I think I would rather have Olave than T-Mac. But that's tough. If someone said, I guess I would have to wait to after the NFL draft. I would not be willing to trade Chris Olave right now for Tetaroa, not knowing, does he fall in the draft or whatever.
Yeah, I think people would be a little bit higher if, let's say, McMillan is a top 5 rookie pick. I think people would say I'd rather have the 105, 104 than Chris Olave.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will.
Yeah, and part of it is I have a sunk cost. I've loved this player for years. I want him to be great. And
he is great.
He is good when he's on the field.
He's got a consistency rating of an A over his last 17 rolling games. He's very
Now, what
good.
did it actually feel like, though?
An F. It was like an F in the in the B.
Oh my
It was a bad. I mean, that just Derek Carr, stop throwing murder balls.
Okay, I got a couple more questions here. This one's from Mando, who's one of our mods on Discord. He said, who are some of your 2025 second contract blow-up targets? Guys like Evan Ingram, Saquon, Hawkinson, guys that like kind of blew up on the second contract. Betz, you have a couple names here, and I think the tight ends are the ones that we usually say like they take longer to develop.
For the record, I do not have 2 names. Okay, I have 1 name. I don't know who put the first name on here. The first name on the list is Kyle Pitts, who I did not put on this list.
That was me.
I'll let you share on that.
Oh, okay.
But Isaiah Likely, I think, is super interesting. Where they picked up the Ravens picked up Mark Andrews' roster bonus, so he's back for one more year, but they've also kind of already hinted like the end is probably closer than not for him on the team. So whether or not Likely is back with Baltimore as the dude next year without Andrews, or Andrews stays and Likely's gone and he signs a contract elsewhere as a starter, we've seen him flash, obviously. So I think Isaiah Likely is a really strong candidate for this. And then at the running back position, it's crazy to see these guys as free agents in 2026. So these guys are all entering their contract year. Breece Hall, Ken Walker, James Cook, and Travis Etienne.
Ooh. Jason, who would you be most excited about on their second contract? We have to know team, but like in the same way we looked at Josh Jacobs, was like, he's ending his contract, gets a second one, gets this breath of fresh air in terms of being the dude.
Yeah, Breece is exciting, a lot more exciting than someone like Travis Etienne. I think Breece is a good player. I'm not sure if Travis Etienne is actually a good player. I also think that there are a couple wide receivers Betz mentioned earlier as good, like buy low nasty boys who also fit this in Jacoby Myers and Juwan Jennings. If they go out and have a decent season, just decent, like just they're a good NFL player, they're going to get a big contract because they're wide receivers and teams are needy, and they'll be, on another contract where I think they could have value more than you think, since right now they're both, 1 year left on their deals.
Okay. Final question here. It's a trade question. It says, I have a 101 in Dynasty, and someone has offered me Kyren Williams, JSN, and a late second. Not a contender in rebuild. What would you do? So 101.
Who's this from?
Or Kyren, JSN, and a second. Jason, what would you do?
I would take Kyren, JSN in a second, and I would do a cartwheel. I mean, I'm a Kyren believer. Obviously, he's currently a free agent right now, and that's a little scary. They're working on a deal, but they're a little bit apart. But JSN is, he was a top 10 wide receiver this last year. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are gone. You could make a legitimate argument that JSN is more valuable than Genty straight up. If you're going to add Kyren Williams in a second, I think you got to take that deal.
Ooh, that's a hot take. Because the market is definitely not an agreement that JSN is worthy of that selection. Man, that is tough. I think the right side of this is probably the Kyren side, but I feel like I want to get like more out of the 101, if that makes sense, because it's so highly coveted this year. Like Genty is the dude.
That seems like enough for the 101.
I think you could get more. I think you get a higher tier wide receiver.
I mean, always
not that JSN's bad.
You know what you should do is you should send him a screenshot of a trade calculator saying, I don't know, man, you need to throw in something else.
You're off. You need to add the 403.
I think that, would you say that this is a fair deal?
Yes. It's definitely a fair deal. I don't think either side is like, I don't look at this as completely lopsided one way or the other. The only thing, he says he's in a rebuild. He's not a contender right now. Kyren is more helpful for a contender than a rebuild, but JSN is still a very young pup, so I think you're good there. And especially if Kyren gets a contract extension, that'll change. If Kyren got if Kyren next week gets a 3-year contract extension, good money, gets $12 million a year, $13 million a year, a lot of guaranteed money, and that comes out next week, I don't think that trade is made. I don't think that trade offer is on the table anymore. Yeah, I agree. That's going to do it for this episode. We are 1 week away from the draft, so we'll be talking all things draft. Make sure you go check out the Ultimate Draft Kit, Ultimate Draft Kit Plus, to get all of Jason's Dynasty rankings. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.